Welcome back to Shred Guitar in the 80s. Today's going to be a fun day. We're going to look at some Vinnie Moore, Paul Gilbert style fast alternate picking, changing positions on two strings. It's a sequence that I really like to do, and it's a lot of fun to play, and it sounds really cool when you get it up to speed. We're also going to look back on the Neoclassical era and how the press compared Vinnie Moore, Paul Gilbert, and Yngwie Malmsteen back in the day, and if that was fair or not, looking back all these years later. And we're also going to review and look at the Eagle Rock DVD CD set of the Deep Purple reunion tour in the Perfect Strangers era from 1985. So let's get started. We're going to start these licks out in the key of D major, and I'm tuned down a half step. And the pattern's going to go like this. So it's initially in two positions. You can think of the lick as this initially. It's 6 notes straight up, 17, 15, 19, back to 17, back to 15, so we get, then we're going to play 17, 15, shift down with our first finger to 14, and then with our pinky we'll play 17, 15, 14 again, and then we'll go to the second string, we play 17, 15. So that's the lick initially. You can think of it as 16th notes or 32nd notes. And then with our first finger, we can start the lick in the next position at the 14th fret. So what you can do is you can end the lick on the 14, and then actually just start the lick in that position. And then in a 12th position, then the 10th position, and then so at the very end I do this. Then I just double the 10, 8, 7 on the second string, hit 9 on the third, and then end it with 7. Kind of get that classical feel. I really like that lick a lot. I really love those early Vinnie Moore records, the Paul Gilbert stuff. I talk about it tons on my channel, Tony McAlpine, all those records, but especially the Vinnie Moore and the Yngwie albums. When he picked those single string lines or 2-note string lines, Yngwie or Vinnie Moore with these kind of licks, it just really got me, and I had to be able to do that. So I just tried everything I could to get that sound, and licks like this really helped me kind of achieve that kind of thing. And how I keep that lick quiet is this part of my hand, right below the thumb, is resting on the lower strings, and kind of just grazing the lower strings to keep it quiet. I'm muting with it, and I'm using more of an elbow mechanic, but your wrist works fine. I've always gravitated towards that, and it's very comfortable for me, kind of like the early Vinnie Moore stuff. I've been having fun doing my channel here, and I've been going through all my boxes of books and magazines and pulling out all my issues that are neoclassical rock guitar oriented in the Yngwie, Vinnie Moore, Paul Gilbert mode. And it's really interesting reading a lot of the older articles. They really lumped everyone into sounding just like Yngwie in that style. But it's really neat to look back, in hindsight 30 some years later, and really see that they were all very different. Paul Gilbert's technique was totally different than Yngwie's technique. Tony McAlpine was totally different than Vinnie Moore. They all had a different way of approaching it. They might have used similar scales and had a similar approach in terms of soloing, but technically they were all very different. Vinnie Moore was very closely related to Al Di Meola in terms of technique. I think Vinnie took a lot from Al, and he talks about it in the articles, what a big influence Al was on his playing. With the single string sextuplet kind of licks and the circular fours and things like that. Paul, on the other hand, used a lot of hammer and pull-offs and come more from the Van Halen school with some Gary Moore, and also a lot of Akira Takasaki from Loudness. I hear a lot of that in Racer X, which I'm going to talk about in a future episode. Paul's technique was very different. Paul didn't do the up and down one string kind of thing as much. He kind of stayed more in positions on groups of like two strings and did a lot of really cool repetitive licks and ran up the scale this way, where Vinnie was similar to Yngwie in a way where he ran up and down the neck on one string a lot. Yngwie was more economy picking, with alternate picking up and down one string with a lot of hammer-on and pull-offs. Tony was alternate picking, kind of downward pick slanting, as Troy Grady talks about, with hammer and pull-offs in there. But they were all set up totally different. I was a huge fan of them all, and I tried to play all their stuff. My technique's probably the closest related to Vinnie Moore's, I would say. I'm strictly an alternate picker when I'm playing fast lines, unless I'm doing like Eric Johnson type stuff. But it's really neat to read these old issues of the magazine. This is really cool. I talked about this before. It's the Guitar School Neoclassical Fusion Guitar issue, which has articles on Yngwie, Vinnie Moore, and Paul Gilbert. But it's a really fascinating read, and it has some neat transcriptions, and it's a lot of fun just looking at it. It's around the time Yngwie did his Live in Leningrad album, which I really like a lot, and Vinnie Moore had put out his Time Odyssey, just a brilliant album, and Paul was in Mr. Big. So it was kind of a neat time right before the grunge movement came. Yeah, so this is right before music changed. This is September '89. And it's really interesting going back and reading all this, and looking back in hindsight and seeing just the differences that were really there. Today's CD pick is actually a CD-DVD set that Eagle Rock put out, I'd say about 2012. It's hard to believe it's 8 years already. This was from the 85 tour, 84, 85, it kind of crossed between the years there. And this was for the Perfect Strangers album, just a brilliant album and possibly one of the greatest comeback albums ever by any band. This is a great DVD, I just love it. Ian Gillan, Ritchie Blackmore are just really on fire on this, and Ritchie back then had a really just a reckless abandon to his playing during this period, where he would just play this really wild stuff and make noises and do all sorts of crazy stuff, but it was brilliant. It was Ritchie Blackmore. I really love this era of the band, the reunion era. I just thought the songwriting was brilliant. I really like House of Blue Light also, but this is just the Perfect Strangers tour. The songs on it are a really cool version of Highway Star, then it goes into Nobody's Home. One of my favorites off Perfect Strangers, and A Strange Kind of Woman, a really nice version with some nice interplay between Ian and Ritchie. Then A Gypsy's Kiss, another classic Perfect Strangers tune. Then it goes into the title track, Perfect Strangers, which when I first heard it at MTV, I saw the video. I remember seeing it and just was blown away by the song. It almost sounded Zeppelin-like. It had a Zeppelin-like quality to it. Just a brilliant song. And I love that little Phrygian thing at the end. Under the Gun, another brilliant song for Perfect Strangers, the great guitar solo. Then a really cool version of Knocking at Your Back Door. Then they do some Lazy, a version of Lazy. The second disc has Child in Time. They do Difficult to Cure, the Rainbow Classic, into a keyboard solo. And then Space Truckin', which is a really cool jam, drawn out, nice interplay with Ritchie and the band. Into Black Knight, the in rock classic Speed King, and they close it out with Smoke on the Water. Yeah, it's a little bonus DVD too, some promotional stuff from that era. But if you're a fan of Blackmore, Deep Purple does great classic songs. I really recommend you buying this or looking it up. Last I saw, you could stream it on Amazon. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but I saw that you could. It's just a great concert. I throw it on and just play along with it. Blackmore is one of my all-time favorites. I mean, I love Ritchie Blackmore. I love the songwriting. I love his touch and his attack and his tone. Just a brilliant player and always an inspiration to me. His phrasing just stands out and sets them apart. So if you get a chance, check it out. It's Deep Purple, Perfect Strangers Live. Well, thanks a lot for joining me today. I really had a blast showing you some of these two-string sequences in the Paul Gilbert, Vinnie Moore style. It's great to work up your chops, and it was kind of fun to look back on the neoclassical players from the 80s. Looking back all these years, it's kind of neat to see how we hear them now versus how people heard them back then. If you like this, please like and subscribe, and I'm going to do a lot more of this stuff. I'm going to cover a lot of different players, and if you have liked and subscribed to my channel, thank you, and I really appreciate all the comments, and I'm really having a blast doing this, and I plan on doing a lot more for a long time. So thanks a lot for watching, and have fun picking.